Okay, good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody in the room. Good morning, everybody online. Welcome to the Leadership Lab. I'm Jasper Snyder. I'm the EVP of Cross-Platform here at the ARF. I'm the substitute teacher today, if you will, in the Leadership Lab. Substitute dean, the real dean, Chris Cakin, is in Las Vegas. He's online. Good morning, Chris. So we have a treat for you today. We talked last week and we unveiled earlier on this year the results of how advertising works, where we showed that cross-platform advertising is the way forward. Brings huge rewards. The average two-platform campaign is 19% more effective than a single-platform campaign. The average five-platform campaign is 35% more effective than a single-platform campaign. So we know it's hugely valuable. One of the challenges, however, is reaching your audience across those various platforms. And there are a couple of hurdles to jump over there. First of all, we know that the consumer is accessing media in different places than they were from the way they were accessing media even 10, 20 years ago. Different times of the day, commute, bathroom, bedroom, whatever. And then critically, consumers are accessing media across a whole range of different devices that didn't even exist 5, 10 years ago. So that's the challenge for the advertiser. From the publisher perspective, it's, one of the hurdles to be leaped is monetizing inventory across these various platforms. One statistic that I think we unveiled at AN, at our audience measurement conference this year, was around about the fact that a hit show, if you imagine go back 30 years, for example, you might actually see a hit show live, maybe you might videotape it, then eventually after a while it becomes syndication, right? So there are kind of 2 or 3 ways you might see any given show. These days, however, if you think of any big show, you can watch it live. DVR, you can watch it the day after, or 30 days after, or 2 months afterwards. You can see it by your TV Everywhere system. You can see it on demand, on a computer, on the TV screen. So, I think it was 25 ways, typically a couple of them illegal, that you can watch any given show right now. So the challenge for the advertiser and the publisher is figuring out exactly where to reach that audience and how they can do it. So we have one of the world leaders in cross-platform measurement here this morning to talk to you about how Nielsen does it. Kelly Abkarian's been the professor. Kelly Abkarian, I should say, has been with Nielsen for 10 years and has a unique skill set and experience based on her time at Nielsen, because not only tactical, Kelly knows the ins and outs, the nuts and bolts of the technology, the SDKs, all these acronyms, how to literally build the measurement systems in tandem with the publishers, but also she has the strategic vision of how to dovetail all these various measurement systems together in a way that meets marketplace needs. So, treat for you in store today. This is a fantastic presentation. I will get out of Kelly's way now. Kelly Abkarian, welcome and thank you.
Thank you. All right, so hopefully we'll have a fun morning. Keep you guys awake. Thanks for joining. My name is Kelly Abkarian. I lead our product leadership at Nielsen, really driving the total audience strategy, but also driving kind of our core rating services across our national TV, local TV, and audio. So what I'm going to do is over the next 90 minutes, we're going to have a little bit of fun, but we're also going to get a lot of insights, both changing media consumer behavior insights, as well as total audience insights. And then I'm going to talk to you about how we put together the total audience platform and exactly what is contained within that. So if you guys could hold your questions to kind of the end, that would be great. So jot it down so you don't forget. I'll take questions after the presentation, and then after that, we're going to play a really fun total audience Jeopardy game. All right, so let's get started. I knew I'd pique your interest in it somehow. All right, so why total audience? Well, I think Jasper hit it dead on. There are so many changes in the consumer landscape. And when you look at those changes, what's phenomenal is that consumers are consuming over 66 hours per week of media. That means every one of you, in case you didn't realize, you have a second job. It's consuming media. It's almost getting to that tipping point where there are no more hours left in the day for you to consume more media. But what's phenomenal is when you look at the growth over the last 10 years, as Jasper mentioned, you see an explosion of growth across new platforms and devices that have merged in the last 10 years that are really contributing to the growth of media consumption. And interesting enough, you'll see that there's been a slight decline on kind of traditional platforms like television and radio. But I'm going to talk to you about why those platforms still are the predominant form in which people are still viewing, especially video. So I think it's important to look at, because many people like to say that there's been a decline in television viewing, television is dead or nearing its death. Well, I'm here to tell you it's far from that. We're at one of the all-time peak highs at 8 hours and 10 minutes per household on an average daily basis. If you look at that chart, what's quite interesting to me is Netflix came in around the 2007 or 8 time frame period, and television usage still soared. So as you can tell, usage of the television viewing still remains near its historic high. So let's look at what is causing the time spent with television, both live and time shifted, which is driving some of the declines in the PUT levels. Well, you'll see here that the worst really was kind of in this July of 2014 out to February of 2015 timeframe. And since then, there actually has been good kind of slowing down of those declines. And if anything, we're almost getting back to measures that are very close to 2012, 2013 levels. So the main reason for PUT decline is really less live television viewing. I think it's important to remember live television viewing means that at the minute that broadcast or telecast is airing, the consumers are viewing. What you'll see is across the different demographic groups, you're seeing less live television viewing vary. It is most pronounced in ages 2 through 34. And when you look at 3 months, the first quarter of 2016 versus the first quarter of 2015, you'll actually see that it's somewhat pulling back slightly. Maybe that has to do with the election, not really clear what exactly 100% is driving some of that. So now let's talk about TV connected device usage. And I want to say this is more than just multimedia devices such as Roku's, Apple TVs, and Chromecast, etc. This is also video game consoles. This is also DVDs and any kind of playback method. So it's important to understand the type of growth that we're seeing in these TV connected device usage. In fact, there's been a 2-year increase, almost in the double-digit number, across all age groups leveraging these TV connected devices. But you should drill down to really understand how these individual groups view differently. What you'll see is that in the youngest group, 2 through 11, they are the highest consumers of DVDs. Why is that? Likely because their parents feel like that is a safe harbor in which they can ensure their children are watching safe content. They pop in the DVD and the kids sit in front of the television. The second, when you look at teens, 12 through 17, you'll notice that they are heavy video game console users. Some of this could also include video streaming, as many of you are well aware that video game consoles are not just for gaming anymore. They're also capable of streaming. And when you climb into the 18 to 34 bracket, you'll see that they also are heavy users of video game consoles. But what's interesting, if I were to blow out that age group, it really trails off and starts to have a serious decline in video game console after the age of 25. They are the biggest consumers of these multimedia devices. That is the Apple TVs, the Rokus, the Chromecast, all of those over-the-top devices. They are the highest consumer in time spent against that. And then 35 plus continues to leverage highly to get their viewing, both DVR and VOD. So I don't think it's any surprise that devices that are not internet enabled are actually showing flat growth or declining growth, things like the DVR and DVD. But devices that are internet enabled and more capable are showing more growth. In fact, double digits across most age brackets. Those things are like video game consoles and multimedia devices. So let's talk about the use of these TV connected devices and how that has grown over the years. So you'll see here that 90% of homes turn on a television set in a given day. What this tells you is basically that in a given day, in 2014, 27% on that given day used a TV-connected device in their mix of viewing. That grew by 3% last year. Using that device only in which to consume content grew from 3% to 4%, so still very relatively low numbers of people only using a device when they turn on a television set. But it's important to understand the impact of SVOD. So at Nielsen, we're able to capture how many homes have SVOD access and exactly the way in which they consume SVOD services. So if you see here, the use is still the same. 90% of these homes that have SVOD services still turn on a television set every day, but 44% use in their mix a TV-connected device as a way in which to get viewing. That's more than double homes that have no SVOD services, whether or not they have a broadband and or no broadband capability into their home. So the other thing that's important to understand is to look at how this is affected by age. What you see here is that the 2 through 34 bracket, almost 50% of their viewing is coming through a combination of television and connected device viewing. Clearly, SVOD content has an effect on that younger demographic that is viewing and getting access to that content. Because once again, this is drilling further down into SVOD households. So the majority of the viewing on SVOD is coming from that younger demographic. So let's kind of roll this back into the big picture. What we wanted to do is try to understand, with the declines in television cuts, do we see an offset in the increase of usage of TV-connected devices? What you'll see is that for every minute loss, it's not necessarily a complete minute gain with TV-connected devices. But once you overlay the other ways in which consumers are getting access to content across PCs, smartphones, and tablets, you start to understand what's truly driving some of the consumer behavior. But I think it's really important that despite the digital growth and the loss of TV live viewing, most video usage still comes from the television. In fact, television is clearly the largest source across all day parts of how people are consuming content. So that's really the media landscape to help you guys understand how that's evolved and is changing. Now I'm going to talk to you about what we're doing to kind of help our clients bring all of those pieces together in which to measure it. So the problem that we set out to solve for the industry was this. Today, the C3, C7 ratings is only accounting for a portion of the audience. As you can see, there's considerable lift outside that 7-day window, or even inside that 7-day window where the same ad load is not being carried in that given piece of content. In this real example of a broadcast crime drama from November of last year, we see almost a 20% lift of audience viewing within a 35-day window. So being able to understand and add these pieces up in a comparable way was our mission. I always like to look at how does total content ratings compare to the currency. Where is that audience coming from? Well, if you see here, you'll see that currencies is there on the far left and total content ratings is on the far right. There's almost a 1.5 million lift just beyond that 7-day window. But what you don't probably, or you're scratching your head trying to understand is, how is there a lift within the 7-day window? Well, many of our clients today are not carrying that same ad load across to all platforms. But that viewing in today's industry rules doesn't count and credit to C3, C7 ratings. That, in this example of this broadcast crime, represents another 2 million that is adding to the total audience. So let's talk about the data that we've included in the total audience platform. We start with the Live plus 7 number. So we're starting with the program rating number that captures television, both live and time shifted, whether that's happening on a DVR or even VOD, where that piece of content is being made available on VOD within that 7-day window, as well as even digital viewing that's occurring within that 7-day window but carrying that same ad load. So we start by adding up all those minutes, program minutes only, across that 7-day window. Next, we layer in DVR viewing beyond that 7-day window, all the way out to day 35. So we're now capturing all the time-shifted viewing on a DVR appliance that's occurring from days 8 to day 35. Third, we're taking anything that's hitting the television screen glass, whether you're using SVOD or VOD, or even a connected device service or connected device platform, like an Apple TV, like a Roku, etc. And we're capturing all those programming minutes and including that as well. And then lastly, we're capturing all the content that's occurring across mobile devices, whether that's a smartphone or a tablet, as well as PCs. And we're including all those programming minutes to come up with the Nielsen total audience. So I wanted to spend some time on one of the foundational cornerstones of our total audience measurement, and that is to bring about comparable metrics. The importance of this is, how do you, in a cross-media world, really compare platforms across TV and digital? So I can't take the credit for this. This is the godfather of Glenn's work, which is, he always talks about how many, how often, and how long. How do many people watch, or how often do they watch, and how long do they watch? Those were the organizing principles we used in which to create metrics that we wanted to ensure we could create true cross-comparability. When you look at how many, it's represented by the unique audience reach, which is how many unique viewers watched a given program. This can be represented as a total or a percentage. For how often, this is represented by views. A view is truly just how many unique viewers started a video. We can also understand the average frequency, which is really about how many times each unique viewer watched that video. And then lastly, we can measure how long, which is all about counting up the total time spent, the time spent per view, as well as the unique audience time spent. And then cross-cutting all of this is the average audience metric, because what that brings together is how many people watched and for how long did they watch. That's an important thing to remember as we look at this next section as to how the importance of having comparable metrics is. So let me give you some examples. If you look at a program like Jimmy Kimmel and you look at the audience on television in comparison to the audience who watched it on YouTube, see that it looks like YouTube has a much larger audience than television. Television at the average minute audience of 2.2 million, and YouTube at 25 million unique views. Well, as I mentioned, views don't capture how long someone engaged in that piece of content. So that is an uneven comparison, because average minute audience, once again, is measuring how many people watched and for how long did they watch. So to really try to create a comparable metric, you have to look at, over a given month, for a telecast, what is the reach? Well, it's 5.3 for a given telecast. When you explode that out to a week, it's 16.6. And for a whole month, which is comparable to the 25 million, it's 43.1. As you can see, television brings a much larger reach of an audience than YouTube. The other example I'd like to walk through is World Cup. Thanks to our friends at ESPN, they actually put this example together themselves. They were trying to understand what was the incremental audience they delivered on digital platforms back in 2014 for the World Cup. They knew that they had an average audience on television of 4.6 million. And when they added up all the views, they had an audience of 126 million. But those things are not comparable. You really have to convert those views to average audience so that you can stack those metrics together. Once you do that, you'll see that they still had a sizable lift to average audience of almost 7%, but it pales in comparison to 126 million versus 307,000. And my last example, it's probably my favorite one, which is the NFL live streaming game. So those of you who aren't aware of it, last October, Yahoo got exclusive rights to stream the Jaguar Bills versus, I think, Jacksonville Jaguar, or Buffalo Bills versus Jacksonville Buffalo Bills versus Jacksonville Jaguars. And in that game, they produced overnight metrics to say the success that game had on their Yahoo property. What was interesting is they came and said, wow, we had a sizable audience, and in comparison to television, we almost had the same size. We had 15.2 million users. Well, they were comparing that to an average telecast, NFL telecast, of 17.9 average minute audience. Remember, that's measuring how many people for how long, where views is literally, did someone show up to the page and start the video? What was even more interesting is that the Yahoo game auto-started. You didn't even get a chance to decide for yourself as a consumer, did you yourself actually want to watch the game? So you automatically counted if you hit their home page. Now, we can't account for how many people actually intended to watch versus did watch, but when you bring those comparable metrics back down, what you'll see is that globally, because they stream the game globally, it was 2.4 million average minute audience and 1.6 in the US. Now that's a sizable audience for a digital platform. However, it does have some noise in the numbers, as I mentioned, because we have no idea how many people actually intended to stay in that average audience versus not. So these are the sets of core metrics that we've brought together, as I mentioned at the start of this discussion, which is really looking at average audience rating, unique reach, views, average frequency, and total and average time spent. Nielsen's goal was to bring together a set of comparable metrics so that researchers could tell their story in a very comparable way. But in addition to bringing together metrics, we also had to do a number of things that are very different into the way in which we bring television ratings to the ecosystem today. I'm going to walk you through some of these because I always say we've kind of turned television on its side when we had to add in all of the digital platforms. And here's why. The first thing is, in traditional television ratings today, we report on a telecast level. Telecast is really at the time of air. But in a digital and VOD world, there's no such concept as a telecast. And so in order to tie all that data back together, we had to actually look at how we could report at the lowest granular level. So we do that by tying together at an episode level. Secondly, in television today, because the linear model presupposes that the ad load in the program is the same across everyone consuming, it is actually counting up both program and commercial minutes across the duration of that program. But for total audience, we really just wanted to measure the program minutes because we don't care what type of ad load it has or if it has no ad load at all. And so we had to account for that. And that gets to that next point around the ad model. We really wanted to ensure that we started to have an ability to measure content separately from ads, that as more and more the relationship between a piece of content and ads starts to change. Next, we had to increase the universe. Today in television, we use a universe estimate of US TV households. But when you're adding in digital and VOD across all these platforms, there are people that don't have to have a television set in their home in which to consume content. So we moved to total US population. Next, and kind of somewhat along the lines of the telecast versus episode level reporting, we had to fix the way in which time-shifted viewing is credited. Instead of crediting to the day of air, we needed to credit to the day of view. Once again, this is because there's no concept in a digital VOD world as the day of air. With all of these changes, you can imagine that it does make the numbers look quite different from the way in which television ratings is produced today. So let me go into the last section here around total audience insights. This is actually real insights coming off of our total content ratings platform that we're working with all of our clients in which to go live against. So let me start with looking at a series of programs, 9 programs across 9 episodes, to understand, is there lift beyond the 7-day window? Well, what you'll see is there's absolutely lift across every single program beyond that 7-day window, but the lift does vary across those programs. And I'll share with you in a couple slides more around why that is. You'll see that this is actually across a 17 to 18-week window across all of these programs. So if we actually reorder these programs in which to look at from highest lift to lowest lift, what you're going to see is that the more lift that is generated by programs that have more viewing beyond that 35-day window. And if you want to look to say what is driving that lift or the highest percentage of lift, just looking at VOD and DVR, you'll see that once again, that programs that have that greater lift, VOD tends to contribute much higher and at a much more steady growth than DVR. What we've seen is that DVR beyond that 7-day window tends to have a pretty steep decline. So we wanted to look at, does the lift of the audience have anything to do with the genre of the program? How does that drive consumer behavior differently? Well, what's interesting is those first 2 programs that you saw, when we looked at what genre did they belong to, the 4 to 5% belong to reality or competition shows. As you can imagine, as a consumer, they're the type of programming that you kind of have to watch week to week because results change. So the reality of watching that 7 days later is much more challenging. If you then look at serial dramas, where the episode or the plot advances week to week, you see more lift, but you don't see as great of a lift as some of the programs we'll see here in a few minutes, about 10 to 13%. And then when you look at episodic dramas, where the plot is not necessarily connected week to week, but it is connected across the show, you see once again greater lift, 16% to 30%. And then for sitcoms, we're seeing anywhere from 17% to 32%. And lastly, animated comedies are greater than a 50% lift across time after that 7-day window. So now let's add digital and understand the effects that digital has to television consumption or video viewing. So we wanted to look at 2 programs over the course of 6 weeks to understand how digital drove growth across that period of time. What you'll see is that digital more than doubled over that period of time from week 1 out to week 6, driving almost a 3% lift in this first program and a 5% lift in the second program. So TCR, total content ratings, not only lets you understand how program viewing changes across time, it also allows you to understand how people consume differently. If you look at average minutes viewed in a given piece of content by platform, what you'll see here is that VOD has a much higher engagement than live TV, which makes some sense because a lot of people bounce in and out or change channels when they're on live television, versus if they deliberately recorded or went to a VOD service, they went there with the intention to watch the full program. You'll notice the scale at the top is 40. Remember, we're measuring program minutes only, so this is a 60-minute episode, and 20 minutes of that was commercials. We can also look at interesting things like age. How does age for a given program or a set of programs changes by platform? What you'll see is across these 2 programs that in live TV, the age difference across these 2 programs is quite different. 33 for one program, 49 for another program. But what's really interesting is if you look at VOD and digital, those ages almost converge, where you see that VOD across those 2 same programs, the median age is 25 and 26, and for digital, 24 and 31. So we wanted to take another program, an episodic drama, and really understand the relation of median age to time. So if you look at this given program, which is not related to the two previous programs I showed you, the median age in week 1 of this program was 55. By week 6, the median age was 33. You can imagine, as I mentioned, a lot of the viewing is happening on VOD and digital, and as I told you, VOD and digital drive a much younger audience. But what's also interesting is with the decrease in age comes the increase of time spent. So you see in week 1, the time spent viewing is about 26 minutes, where by week 6, the time spent on that given episode is on average about 44 minutes. Once again, because people are deliberately choosing to go and watch that full episodic program, they're likely to watch the entire thing. So in summary, Total Audience was built to really deliver on 4 key areas. The first was to provide consistent and comparable metrics so that same comparisons can be made when comparing platforms, content consumption, and any type of viewing that's happening by a consumer. Secondly, it was meant to be inclusive, meaning pull off all of the rules of television ratings and include all viewing that happens not just in that 7-day window, but well beyond that 7-day window until that asset is retired. And third, and most importantly, which we didn't cover today, it's to understand the deduplication, which is really how much incremental audience exists across all these platforms that are truly incremental versus duplicative. So we have the ability in which to understand what the incremental reach of that audience is. And then lastly, most importantly, like television, is to create a syndicated data set so that the whole marketplace can understand viewing of programming across competitors. And with that, I'm going to open up to questions here in the room, and then I understand I've got a moderator in the back to feed questions from the phone or from the web line.
Thanks, Kelly. That was great. So, Evelyn, I think you're keeping an eye on questions online.
No questions yet.
So I want to kick off in terms of questions from the room. Thank you so much. My first question is about marketplace, the relationship between the marketplace and the shift between C7 to 35 and so on. I'm not quite sure how to phrase it, so it's not how long's a piece of string question, but how are you seeing your clients change the way they think about which programs to buy based on these different metrics? Where you had C7 was the absolute gold standard, say 2-3 years ago. You're seeing shifts in the upfronts now. Can you talk us through some of the changes you see there?
I think what we're starting to see as these insights unveil themselves, programmers can better understand how to monetize these audiences and across what platforms they should present various windowing opportunities in which to make that content available to maximize that reach.
Got it.
As well as, advertisers are always looking for those younger audiences. And so where do they also look to find them? If they're out there beyond that 7-day window, it allows the sell side and the buy side to start to have a conversation around the value of those audiences and how to monetize those audiences over time. And so I think what we're starting to see is both, today the sell side has access to total content ratings. Come Q3, Q4, the agency side will have access to total content ratings. What we expect to happen is that it will start to evolve the way in which potentially they want to look to even change the C3, C7 rules themselves and make them somewhat more flexible, if you will.
Right.
But also, as many of you are aware, people are monetizing digital inventory today. Just because it sets out that 7-day window doesn't mean it's going unmonetized. But this really helps to dimensionalize the true value for a given program, how large their reach is, and the type of engagement they're getting across what type of consumers. And so they're using these insights, I think, in which to basically better position and sell that inventory across to the advertisers.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so this is sort of a US view, right? And you made the point of how you have to include total US and non-households. How does that work on a local market level? And have you
Yeah.
You know.
So that's a good question. Right now, this is national. We are in parallel working with our local clients to integrate a localized local service. And there are, different sets of challenges around the way in which the local TV clients want to bring together television and digital.
Mhm.
And the first one being is that they're not on an average minute audience today. They're doing an average quarter hour on television.
Right.
So to kind of bring TV and digital, making that leap to both impressions away from cost per point and average minute audience are going to be things that need to happen. The goal would be that, once again, it would be total US pop. We would be able to break down by DMA reporting just like we do today across television, across the 210 DMAs.
Mm-hmm.
So there's work ongoing, but what I've showed you here, the insights and the platform itself, what we've released as the first phase is for our national clients.
Right. Okay.
Good question.
Since to a large degree we're looking at this information to advertise on that, when you make for an hour show, you're looking at only the 40 minutes of viewership. Why would you look at the 60 minutes of viewership and compare the people that might be flipping around the channels during live?
In essence, you're just counting the program minutes versus the commercial minutes, right? Because there's pods in between all of that. So you're understanding the viewing behavior, because it's not like commercials are all stacked at the end. The program minutes span across the full 60. We're just extracting how much time is actually being spent watching the content separately from the ads, because, as I mentioned, in order to bring this data together, we had to kind of pull that relationship apart, because in linear television today, it has a direct relationship. In digital, everyone in this room could see a completely different ad. So by measuring those same things together, you're actually measuring apples and oranges together. And so for us, we wanted to get to a place where the industry could start to understand total content consumption and total campaign or ad consumption. And that's kind of what, we're bringing together with our total content ratings and then our total ad rating suite, which really enables you to measure the campaign reach and exposure across time.
I was just thinking that, in terms of the commercial viewership within a program, live TV where you can kind of flip channels, DVR where you can fast forward through the commercials, and some of the over-top devices or on-demand devices where you can't, the actual commercial viewership, even if the program viewership minutes are the same, is going to be...
Yeah, so C through C7 will still measure your ad consumption along with digital ad ratings, which will measure your digital ad rating consumption. And then we can bring that together to understand deduplication across TV and digital. And so, we've heard loud and clear from our clients, they have a need to understand content consumption separately from ad consumption so that they have flexibility in the way in which they want to monetize that inventory and basically, put a linear ad model or a dynamic addressable ad model or no ad model at all.
I actually have two questions. The first is the 8 to 35 time shift days data available now or in the future iteration of the tool?
So it's available now. What's probably being maybe asked is we're also doing work to bring it into our core television ratings tool, which is our software called Empower. So that will be available at the start of the fall broadcast season or this television season. But in total content ratings, when we released this data set to clients back in January, the DVR days 8 through 35 was available on day one. In fact, for 140 measured networks, we actually had all the data of live and time-shifted viewing, including out beyond that day 8 window, because we collect all that data through our panel homes today.
And the second question says, how do live events fare in total measurement across all platforms, not just the time-shifted measurement across platforms?
Can you reread that one again?
Yeah. How do live events fare in total measurement across all platforms, not just the time-shifted measurement across platforms?
Well, so, I don't have that data here today, but, I see Dave Poltrak in the audience. I mean, he could probably speak to this better than I can, but many of our clients are making some of their content available at the same time on digital platforms in a live streaming way. A lot of your TV Everywhere platforms will allow you to access content just streaming over the internet, the same way that you would do turning on your set-top box in the home. So we're capturing that viewing for folks like CBS who are participating in what we call digital TV ratings, which enables us to understand the live viewing across all platforms, as well as the time-shifted viewing that occurs within that 7-day window. And so, I spoke more to kind of the decline of live viewing on television. My guess is there's probably not a huge growth of live viewing on digital that's making up for that drop, but the overall, live plus time shifted within that 7-day, you saw some of those numbers, that there is considerable growth. The 2 million that I mentioned that we're capturing in that 7-day window kind of speaks to how many people are still consuming content within that first week that is not being captured today in our C3, C7 ratings. And I don't know, Dave, if you have any comments to add or not. He's the true professor, by the way. I'm going to jump.
No, I think you covered it pretty well. I mean, but in terms of live events, I mean, it's more and more they're going across all devices. But I guess one of the big breakthrough things to watch in the fall is that the NFL is going to Thursday night NFL games are going to be streamed on Twitter.
Yeah.
So they'll also be broadcast. Only the ones the NFL takes care of themselves. So they only sold the ones that CBS bought and NBC bought. They didn't sell the ones that they own themselves for NFL Network. But those, and you'll be able to see it's going to be a relatively small number and probably an insignificant number. So on the trade press that Twitter has managed to get a lot of advertising support for that insignificant number. We'll see but that I think, because the NFL is the ultimate live event, so I think that will be a good test of exactly how you'll extend the live version. I'd like to ask one thing that obviously everyone's very interested in the millennial audience.
Yeah.
And the statistic you showed, and you even made mention of it yourself, you have 18 to 34. And more, the millennials are, there's 18 to 24 and 25 to 34.
Yep.
And they're quite different.
Yep.
And and also there's living at home with your parents versus on your own, and those are quite different.
Yep.
You go into more granularity in terms of looking at the millennial audience, because one of the things that's very phenomenon that's very interesting is from the turn of the century until this year, the 18-year-olds, the growth in 18-year-olds has been the leading growth point in the millennials. From now to the end, for the next 5 years, the number of people turning 35 is going to be greater than the number of people turning 18.
Yeah.
And because the millennials, I hate to tell the millennials in the audience, but you too will age. And, so I think some of the granularity within that broader 18 to 34 audience probably where most significant changes.
Yeah, I would agree. Glenn Enoch did a fabulous study on millennials, speaking to some of the lifestyle behavioral changes that you have to look at, and not just look at, platform usage in isolation, that can drive different behaviors. And so we talked about, being in college, coming out of college, moving back home, starting a family, moving out with no family, and then starting a family. So those various life stages, and how those life stages actually have a drastic impact on media consumption behavior. We also kind of talked about how many millennials are getting married later, having kids later, which is also influencing their consumption behaviors. And so it's a really well done study if you haven't seen it. I believe it's on our Nielsen.com site. It's a great look into the behaviors of millennials. And a lot of reason why we can do this is because we have a longitudinal television panel that allows us to trend behaviors across time and really understand dimensions about the people living in the home and how their behaviors change across time. And so I highly encourage you to take a look at that if you haven't seen it, because it's a fascinating study, really looking at millennials not just as kind of a label, if you will, but truly trying to understand how life cycle stages really influence and affect behaviors. I will say that one of the things that was found is that their TV connected device usage is definitely higher. And so will that persist when they start, have a home, start a family? I think we'll know in the next 4 to 5 years how some of those behaviors that we're seeing do or don't change, and they take those with them, or how technology influences them to take some of those things with them versus kind of resorting back to the way that other 35 plus today consume media. So I think we will see some of those consumer behaviors transgress across. Will they still clip at the same growth and rate? I think time will tell.
Now, the other thing is smart TV. We're getting to a point where just about every TV show now is a smart TV. You see that the Roku and Apple TV. I mean, in our research, the people, the engaged streamers who are using those devices are using them instead of, even though they have smart TVs, they still keep their Roku box
Right.
or their Apple TV because they find it's a better curation process,
Right.
a better
Yep.
guide system. Do you see a lot of growth? Are you starting to see growth in people who are actually using the full functionality of the smart TV?
Yeah, so we are seeing growth on what we can track, which is internet-enabled smart TVs, where people actually have the ability to use the smartness of the TV. And so we have seen double-digit growth in that. Some of that is almost driven by the manufacturers themselves, where they realize we have to make this really dumb user-friendly so that when someone plugs in the television, it looks for the Wi-Fi signal and connects, and you don't have to be a tech geek guru in which to connect it. So that's driven some of the artificial growth, if you will, or organic growth that really is not a consumer deliberately saying, I want to use this smart TV and I'm going to do everything it takes to connect it. I think some of the work that we've done with our connected device report to try to understand some of the consumer behaviors is just starting to unfold. What I will tell you is that I still think those platforms have a way to go to make them usable. And that user experience, to your point.
I call mine not so smart.
Yeah, I'm with you. I have various versions of not so smart in my house, depending on the model year that you've purchased. And so, I think my oldest smart TV is from 2012, and that is the most dumbest smart TV I've ever met. And so I think, Dave, that we'll have to kind of watch whether that user experience starts to evolve, much like even the cable providers have evolved their user experience over the last couple of years in which to make it a more seamless experience with the emergence of TV connected devices. At the end of the day, part of the challenge, as you well know, is these things all have proprietary operating systems. And so trying to build apps and capabilities on these things, there's only so much time and so much investment across all these things that any given one company can make in which to make this stuff work across the ecosystem. So my personal hope is that you'll see some, standardization, if you will, that helps to drive some more flexible ecosystem to help drive usage of just, ways in which consumers want to get access to content. I mean, I will say Roku definitely has the largest time spent still with a device. And so part of what we do is in our 40,000 household panel today, we track over 50,000 TV connected devices. So everything that hits a television glass screen in our television panel homes we are able to measure everything happening on a television glass screen. So if there's a Roku piping the content up, we're able to measure that. We recently, in the April timeframe, released a new capability that really allows you to break down usage behavior by platform, by these platforms, to truly understand how much time is being spent on what platforms, and how does the behavior change across age. We actually unveiled some of those findings, back in April, May timeframe that were pretty insightful. But what's interesting is Apple TV may have still the largest share of people with devices, but Roku is A, quickly catching up, but B, they have the highest time spent of all of the TV connected or multimedia devices today. When a consumer chooses to use a Roku device, they use it for much longer than any of the other devices.
What do you attribute that to?
I think their user experience. I mean, if you haven't used a Roku, it's a pretty good interface, and it's a very simple remote and very easy to navigate. And I think they put a lot of investment behind the user experience side of consuming content.
Right.
Yeah, there's a curation aspect of it, and also, like if you want to go from Netflix to regular television and back and forth and everything on a smart TV, you gotta go. It's like 5 steps
Right.
in, 5 steps out.
Yeah.
Type of thing. Roku is the least amount of steps to get from one to the other.
Right.
And I think that's, and people who are really heavy digital, big Netflix fans and everything, they like the idea that on a Roku box, Netflix is just another channel.
Right.
Actually, I have 2 more questions.
Okay.
Wow.
The first one is, does total audience measurement allow you to understand if a household starts watching content on one platform and then changes to another platform?
Yes, so there will be, obviously an understanding across time, because we're actually measuring consumption of viewing across all platforms. So you can see how, and I showed some of that today, how, the viewing changes. Some of that has to just do with availability of where you can get access to the content, right? They could make, broadcaster could make the program available immediately on VOD, or they could wait 7 days and then put it on VOD. So some of it has to do with windowing, but because we're tracking day by day by day, you can understand and see the mix not only of platform consumption, but also how age and other types of things evolve or change across the consumption period.
And the second was, I'm also interested in the extent of verifiable multi-platform data can be collected and matched with a unique tag.
It's either too early or I have no idea what that question is. Can you read it? Can you reread the question? I'll do my best to.
It says, to the extent, I guess I'm referring to the first question. That's a great question. I'm also interested in the extent verifiable multi-platform data can be collected and matched with a unique tag.
Well, I think with big data or anything, there's a boundless opportunity in which to try to connect, an individual household or an individual consumer across platforms. And so, Nielsen's got those capabilities in which to produce what we would call custom insights around some of those things. Obviously, privacy and is extremely important to Nielsen and to consumers, and we take that very seriously. And so this is not something where you would be able to grab a household ID and then understand how that household, is tied across time. But there are ways in which we can, in a privacy-friendly way, share insights around our television panel households in the way in which consumption is occurring across television and digital. And it's not really through a single tag, I think, as everyone knows. It's much more complicated than that, in which to try to match against that. But given the relationship Nielsen has with our television households, we do have a unique opportunity because we actually know everything about that home and about the people in the home. in which to be able to understand and match across digital viewing that's also occurring inside that home.
Thank you, Kelly. You want to make a switch to the Jeopardy section?
I think we have one more question.
Okay.
One more simple question.
Simple's good.
Just, we've talked about the aging out of millennials. I'm in that group. I as mentioned before, I know I'm getting older. And as technology grows and I use whatever it is, there's going to be a shift in usage amongst age groups. Have you done any work or have you seen any trends that suggest or can suggest on each platform or on categories of platforms, there's an acceleration by adoption by older generations or younger generations, demos. And the reason I ask that is because what I've seen when you look at VOD or DVR, it's not just people aging up. It's just there's just a lag with the demos. It's the kids use it and they tell their parents, or the parents use it. So they're not ignorant to the stuff. It just takes them a little bit more time.
Right.
What have you seen on that?
Yeah. So I mean, I think some of these charts, you saw the double-digit growth across all age groups of TV-connected devices, for instance. Mm-hmm. Some of that is because, the young people try it, it starts to get buzz, and then it starts to get more traction, not just in the younger demographics, but across all demographics. Mm-hmm. So we are able to run those kind of life change studies and consumption by platform. The millennial thing that Dave mentioned is one where we looked at kind of the millennials and how they changed across life stages. We've also looked at things around how across age groups, how much consumption occurs. You saw some of that in that chart where it showed the breakdown by the various platforms, right? How much time is spent by those different buckets. And so I think, to Dave's point, in the next 5 years, it'll be interesting when the 35, when some of the millennials do start to hit that age and hit a different life stage, do they bring all those behaviors across and continue to grow them? Are there new behaviors that start to emerge in the next 5 years that disrupts that? Or do they kind of go back to, you get busy and the DVR and other things become kind of the way in which your life ends up happening? Time will tell, because some of those behaviors I believe are pretty innate, and so to unstick them the way that you consume and watch video, I don't know that you'll necessarily go back to what we saw here in the 35 plus, which is a large percentage for accessing content via VOD or DVR. So it'll be interesting. We did look at, in the connected device report, as I mentioned, that we believe that a lot of the connected device growth that is much higher in the younger demographics, that you'll see that behavior carry across.
Yeah, if you look at DVR, it's just DVRs, as DVRs took off starting in 2000 and started to grow, the growth was mostly in the younger demographics. Right. And today, there's no growth at all in DVR among people. It's actually going down because they're shifting to digital platforms. Right. But now you look at 65 plus, and there's still growth in DVR. Yeah. They're just discovering the DVR. Yeah. So you can see those patterns emerging, and you can also see in terms of the younger demographics, when the first thing they turn to is VOD, because VOD was an alternative to DVR, so they first turned to VOD. And now they're turning to digital. They're going OTT. So that's the transition. And we have what we call, one of the groups that we're tracking, we call digital first. They're the people, they're watching television on a television set, but they're cord cutters. They don't have a lot of cable channels. And when they turn on their television set, they go to Hulu first. Right. Because Hulu is where there are all the, it's with a 1 day delay, you got 3 networks worth of VOD on Hulu. And so that process is also probably going to age along time too. And pretty much at some point, it's all going to be part, like Roku is doing, it's all going to seem very seamless between Netflix, Hulu, and CBS, ABC, NBC.
Any other questions before we go to the exciting total audience Jeopardy game? Which I apologize for the folks on the phone. It will be hard for you to participate remote because it is a game where, like total audience Jeopardy in real life, you've got to form teams, and we're gonna answer questions. And so if you do want to drop off on the phone, I think that's appropriate.
Perfect. Thanks everybody online and on the phone.
All right, so I need to introduce you to Total Audience Jeopardy. I'm Kelly Upcaring, the better looking, better informed version of Alex Trebek. We're going to break you guys up into teams. Don't move, because we'll just kind of group you kind of at the tables that you're at, though you'll just kind of have to gather because you'll need a person to raise their hand and answer. If you shout out answers, you will lose the points for your team, and the question will go to the team that answered correctly at the last. So the way it'll work is we'll divide up into, let's do 4 teams if we can. So these 2 tables, those 2 back tables with the folks in the back, and then these 2 tables and those group in the back. So 4 teams. You will, the categories, are you ready? Media landscape, hopefully you paid attention. This will test how well you actually listened to what I had to say. Comparable metrics and total audience. So each team, I'll start with one team. You'll pick a category and an amount. We'll go to that question, and then remember 2 things. 1, you need to raise your hand, don't shout. And I will try to do my best to pick the hand that I saw first. Secondly, just like in Jeopardy, you have to say what is, otherwise you will also lose points. So in true Jeopardy fashion. And then we will have a final Jeopardy question. Can I ask you to be the point taker up here to record point adds and point losses?
Full disclosure, as a Brit, I've never seen Jeopardy. So if there's something okay about the rules,
Is there a marker?
Yeah, probably not fine.
All right, so you guys are team 1. These 2 tables here, and join that table.
This one's 1. This is 1
This
here.
is 1 here. Team 2 it starts right there with marked all the way to the back.
Yep.
And then team 3 is this table plus these 2 tables,
Okay.
and then team 4 is the back.
Okay.
So just write team 1. Yep, exactly.
How's that?
Yep, that's perfect. And
A
then
line.
a line and a line down. And then as a team, ask a question or picks a category. Obviously, it's up for everyone to answer. Whoever I choose, and if they get the answer right, then you're going to write their points. If they get the answer wrong, we got to deduct the points.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
All right. So I am going to start with team 3. You know what that is? Yes. Team 3. All right. We're off to a really good start here. Pick a category and amount, please.
Media landscape for 100.
Okay. All right. Access to this type of content has driven up usage of TV connected devices. Access to this type of content has driven up usage of TV connected devices. Type of content. Team 1.
What is digital?
Minus 100.
It's a good start.
Anyone else?
No idea.
What? Anyone else? No one wants the points. All right. Up. Team 3. Let's hear it.
Streaming content? What is streaming?
What did you say? Streaming content?
What is streaming content?
Well, not really. What is SBOT?
Yeah.
Remember the SBOT household charts I showed? How that's driving up 44% versus non-SBOT households that connect to device usage.
So team 4 takes the lead.
Yeah. All right, team 4.
Is SBOT streaming video on demand? Is that what SBOT?
Well, you said,
No.
It's incomplete. Nope.
I will let your colleague decide whether the accuracy of the answer. Subscription, not streaming. But good try, good try. All right, team 4, since you're the only one not in the negative, we'll let you pick a category and an amount.
It's going well.
Yep. Is there a team 4 spokesperson?
Yeah, everyone try to have a spokesperson on your team. Come on, team 4, don't be shy. Gail, Dave.
Total audience for 100.
All right, total audience for 100. Linear TV ratings only includes viewing to content with this type of ad load. Linear TV ratings only includes viewing to content with this type of ad load. Hence, the answer is in the question. Linear TV ratings.
Team 3.
Yes.
You're team 3 or 4?
3.
3, right? So you got, does 4 lose something or no?
No, because I didn't choose the answer.
It's a trick question.
Now, team 3,
No, you don't.
pick a category and an amount, please.
Well, let's do comparable metrics for 100.
All right, comparable metrics. No one wants to for the big money. Audience levels for the 2014 World Cup on ESPN were significantly higher when looking at this metric rather than average audience. Remember the 25 million number versus the 307. What was that metric?
What are views?
Yes. Ding, ding. All right, team 3 again. Category amount, please.
Let's see, media landscape 200.
Media landscape 200. This age demographic has seen the most precipitous decrease in television usage. Remember the live television viewing chart I showed?
What is adults 18 to 34?
I thought it was suspicious.
Remember that chart?
Let's see, what is 2 to 34?
Ding, ding.
2 to 34, okay.
So,
Wow.
Oh, right.
all right, team 3 is really pulling in the lead here. Come on, other teams.
I'll take media landscape 400.
Media landscape, I like it. Let's get big money, big money. Media landscape 400. A decline in this type of viewing is the primary reason for the overall decline in households and persons using television. A decline in this type of viewing is the primary reason for the overall decline in households and persons using television. Team 4. Ding, ding.
Oh. That seems too easy.
All right, team 4 getting on the board. I like it. Category amount, please. Total audience for 300. An example of a broadcast prime program from November showed over an X% increase when looking at the total audience versus traditional C7 ratings. Remember that stack bar chart?
What is 20%?
Ding, ding.
Yay, good job.
That was for 300. All right, amount and category, please, team 1.
We will take
The purple is what's available, by the way.
media landscape for 500.
Media landscape for 500, going all in. Even though traditional television viewing has been declining, the viewing levels are still over this many hours per household per day on average. Team 1.
What is 66?
Ding, nope.
Oh.
Right.
Team 3.
Oh,
What is was 8 hours, 10 minutes? Yes, 8 hours, 10 minutes.
I would have said that too.
All right, so team 3. Category amount for you. Media landscape for 300. Increased usage of these 3 device types has offset the decline in traditional television viewing. Increased usage of these 3, name the 3 device types, have offset the decline in traditional television viewing.
Yeah.
Do it, just do it.
Do it. Do it.
You can't lose.
Team 2.
SVOD, VODs, and what is SVOD, VOD, and DVR?
Device types.
Go.
Team 1.
Oh, no, do it.
No. Team 3.
No, what is smartphone, tablet, CTV?
What was the last one?
CTV.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Smartphone, tablet, and connected
Weird
devices.
question.
Yeah,
I thought it was something.
We're done.
All right. Category and amount, please.
total lines.
By the way, anyone can still win. There's big numbers still on the board, so don't give up yet.
Total audience for 400.
Total audience for 400. Total audience measures viewing across all platforms, including live, TV, DVR, OTT, VOD, and this.
Digital viewing.
Yeah.
Oh, what is digital viewing?
Yeah. Got it. Got the
Daily
point.
double.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is real Jeopardy, man.
We need a
Brutal.
daily double.
We gotta make this a real game, guys. All right. Who was the last to answer correctly prior to that?
That was the list.
I think it was still.
Still yes, team 3. All right. Category amount.
Total audience 500.
Total audience
You gotta
500.
get this right.
A key component of total audience measurement is the application of this process across all platforms so that you can understand the unique reach of a program. Team 4. Ding ding.
What is what?
Deduplication. What is deduplication? All right, we got
Available online. I'm gonna need
a
it.
couple still meaty numbers on the board. What is it, team 1?
Yeah. You have anything for $20? What is Nielsen? Just do it. Total audience of 200. Finish that.
Yeah.
Total audience 200. DVR viewing up to this many days is included in total audience measurement. DVR viewing up to this many days is included in total audience measurement. Team 4. Yeah, what is 35 days?
That's right. I won't answer anymore.
All right, team 4, amount and category, please. 400. Comparable metrics for 400. Total audience metrics uses this as the population base. Team 3.
What is total US pop?
Yes. Ding ding.
We needed that one.
We have a tie.
1100.
Team 3, team 4. Come on, team 1, team 2.
We got this.
You can't land in the negative. At least make yourself presentable. All right, team 3.
We're publishing this online
Or
with
was
the
it-
local names, right?
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Oh,
And
geez.
faces.
Right.
We'll take comparable metrics for 300.
Comparable metrics for 300. On TV, this metric was traditionally calculated by looking at the number of times a viewer watched a repeated minute of a program. This metric is traditionally calculated by looking at the number of times a viewer watched a repeated minute of a program. I can't let Dave answer this. Team 4.
Yeah.
Yes, ding ding.
We've gotten like everyone right except for the ones we've answered.
That was 300.
Yeah, actually,
Team 4. We got 2 amounts left. Comparable metrics for 500, please. This metric represents the audience to the average minute of a program or video. This metric represents the audience to the average minute of a program or video.
What is average audience?
Yes.
we're with
Don't
him.
answer any more questions.
Zero
category, comparable metrics for 200. This metric represents the total deduplicated number of viewers across all platforms. This metric represents the total deduplicated number of viewers across all platforms.
What is a unique viewer?
Yes, unique audience.
All right. Positive.
Okay.
All right, so unfortunately, Team 2, you're going to have a hard time waging a negative $400 in Final Jeopardy. So we will give you $25 in which to try to at least compete. We'll give you actually 150. So you have maybe a chance depending on what these guys do. All right, 150 for them because otherwise they can't participate. We don't want.
150 this time.
We're all about handing out participation trophies.
150.
Yeah. All right. So here's your amounts, team. As you know how Final Jeopardy works, you need to write down your wager before you will see the question. You need to write down your wager before you will see the question. I need the wager turned in to my lovely co-host here. The category is general. So Team 4 and Team 3 really have to decide how much they're willing to risk. And if that's a house.
We don't mind everyone knowing we're going all in.
All right, all in. So they're waging.
We already told them.
Now the other guys aren't going to tell us because they have a lot more.
Wow.
So you don't want to write down what the other teams help.
Those are straightforward questions.
You really got every single one right.
Yeah. So we need it right now. So just hand it to him. He won't write it down. All teams, please submit your wagers. We will not disclose them as in true total audience Jeopardy.
Can we write it down and we give it to her? No,
Team
the
2.
answer.
Team 2, we need a wager. They're all in. Team 2 is all in. Team 3, and you need the wager from Team 4.
I have it here.
Okay, perfect. All right. So, one moment, please, while I get the true total Jeopardy experience here. It wouldn't be the experience without the lovely music. Now remember, you need to write down your response to the question, of which we will,
It's going to be about the NFL.
of which we will then disclose the responses. All right, so you're going to have 33 seconds in which to come up with your answer. Do not shout your answer out. Make sure you talk quietly amongst your team. And can we... All right, bring up the Final Jeopardy, please. The media marketplace needs this type of measurement in order to continue to flourish and grow in the years ahead. If you think too hard, you will get it wrong. The media marketplace needs this type of measurement in order to continue and flourish in the years ahead. All right, please write down your final answers.
Just write down.
A response there from Team 4 now. Team 3.
There's a lot of things. I think, I still, let me say, I think that's what I was thinking.
Hence, I used the buzzword several times throughout my presentation.
Is that what it is? Yeah, I don't.
Okay. Team
That
3.
can't be right. No, that's definitely not right.
Try again.
Okay,
Just think of the buzzwords I used throughout my presentation.
I think it's that easy. Yeah.
What do we
Well,
got here?
1, 2, 4, 3.
All right. So the team 4, we'll start there. What did they wage, my friend? 900.
Yep.
Okay. They answered correctly. What is total audience measurement? Congratulations, team 4. So they get 900. Team 3, who waged 500. They answered also, what is total audience measurement? You guys should have waged all 1,100. You would have made it almost a tied race. All right, team 2.
First.
Well, we did give you play money, and you clearly played with the money. What is comparable cross device?
0.
0 for them.
In fact, that's 100.
We'll just put them back to whatever. Team
And then
1,
over here.
who waged their full
There you go.
200, said, what is cross-platform? So, the good news is that everyone gets a prize. Hopefully you had fun playing Total Audience Jeopardy with Kelly Apkarian, soon to be the new Alex Trebek. And I want to thank you guys. I think we're about out of time for coming. So these are kind of